What happens when the most powerful man in the room tries to cut you down, only to discover he's just ignited an unquenchable fire? This is the story of a woman who defied expectations and a man who learned the hard way that true worth can't be measured by appearances. Before we step into this high-stakes world of ambition and unspoken challenges, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments if you believe confidence is the best outfit. The air in the executive boardroom hummed with concentrated power. Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Global, concluded the strategic briefing, his voice a smooth, commanding baritone. "And that wraps up our discussion for today," he announced, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room as employees gathered their notes, eager for release. But just as the collective tension began to ease, Alexander's gaze snagged on Olivia Parker, lingering with an almost imperceptible smirk. "Before you all rush off," he drawled, his tone casual, yet laced with a razor's edge, "I have a small observation." The room instantly stilled. Every head turned, a silent, expectant ripple. Olivia glanced up from her notepad, her calm, questioning eyes meeting his across the polished table. Alexander tilted his head slightly, his gaze deliberately sweeping over her modest attire. "We pride ourselves on an image of professionalism and excellence here at Reed Global," he mused, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed room. "And yet, it seems some employees believe dressing for success is merely a suggestion, not a standard." A few nervous glances were exchanged among her colleagues, a collective understanding dawning. Olivia's stomach tightened. He was talking about her. She could feel the crushing weight of everyone's eyes, the unspoken judgment hanging heavy in the air. Keeping her expression carefully neutral, she folded her hands together on the table. "I wasn't aware that fashion was a prerequisite for competence, Mr. Reed," she replied, her voice even, steady. Alexander chuckled, a low, dismissive sound that held no genuine amusement. "Oh, it's not. But perception matters, Miss Parker. And if you're aiming for advancement, you might want to consider looking the part." Olivia's grip on her pen tightened, her knuckles turning white. A fiery retort sprang to her lips, something sharp, something that would wipe that arrogant smirk off his face. But instead, she took a slow, steady breath, squared her shoulders, and met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Reed," she said, her voice clear and measured. Then, with a quiet dignity that seemed to challenge his very authority, she gathered her things and walked out of the boardroom, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Alexander watched her go, his smirk still in place. But for some inexplicable reason, he couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that he had just profoundly underestimated her. The moment Olivia stepped into the break room, her carefully contained frustration boiled over. She didn't care about fashion. She had worked her way up through sheer, relentless effort, through countless late nights fueled by coffee and early mornings driven by ambition. And yet, Alexander Reed, a man who had never known a day of struggle in his life, thought her worth could be measured by the fabric on her back. It was infuriating. "Hey, you okay?" Olivia turned to see Leah, a fellow employee and one of the few people in the company who refused to play into the pervasive office politics. Olivia sighed, rubbing her temple. "Alexander Reed is an arrogant, insufferable jerk. That's all." Leah grinned. "Tell me something I don't know." Olivia chuckled, a brief, bitter sound. Then, Leah's eyes sparkled with a mischievous idea. "You're coming to the company gala next weekend, right?" Olivia hesitated. "I wasn't planning to." Leah gasped, feigning outrage. "No way. You have to come." She leaned in, a conspiratorial glint in her eyes. "Think about it. A chance to prove Mr. Dresses for success wrong. Show him that you don't need his approval, but you can still shut him up." Olivia considered it. She didn't want to impress Alexander. She didn't need his validation. But she did want to remind him that she was just as capable, just as worthy regardless of what she wore. So, a fierce resolve settled over her. She nodded. "All right," she said, a determined glint in her own eyes. "Let's do it." What profound impact do you think Olivia's presence at the gala will have on Alexander? And what is the true meaning of looking the part in your world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of defiance and rising above expectations is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. Reed Global's annual gala was an event of sheer luxury, held in a grand ballroom where crystal chandeliers sparkled like a million suspended diamonds. The venue was filled with Chicago's elite, powerful executives, glittering celebrities, and prominent socialites. Alexander Reed arrived dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, his usual air of unshakable confidence surrounding him like an aura. He greeted investors, made polite conversation, but his mind was elsewhere. He wasn't sure why, but ever since the meeting earlier that week, his thoughts kept drifting back to Olivia Parker. Why? Because she had stood up to him. She hadn't flinched, hadn't looked away, hadn't backed down. And that was rare. But as far as he was concerned, she wasn't the kind of woman who attended events like these. She had probably skipped it entirely. Or so he thought. Because when she walked through the grand entrance, the entire opulent room fell silent. Alexander turned instinctively and froze, his breath catching in his throat. Olivia Parker, the same woman he had once dismissed for her apparent lack of fashion sense, looked absolutely breathtaking. She wore a deep emerald green gown that hugged her curves gracefully, shimmering subtly as she moved. Her hair was styled in elegant, soft waves, framing her face perfectly. The simple, understated makeup enhanced her features, making her eyes even more captivating, pulling him in. She wasn't trying to look expensive. She just was. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her. The very same woman he had mocked just days ago now effortlessly commanded the attention of the entire room. Olivia walked with unshaken confidence, a quiet strength evident in every step. And for the first time, Alexander Reed was utterly speechless. Alexander Reed had always been a man of absolute control. But ever since the gala, he felt completely off balance. He tried to dismiss it at first. It was just a surprise, seeing Olivia Parker transform from what he'd perceived as a plain, unremarkable employee into a woman who commanded attention effortlessly. But that didn't explain why he couldn't stop thinking about her. He found himself looking for her in the office, wondering what she would wear next, wondering if she would meet his gaze like she had that night. And worst of all, he hated seeing other men notice her. It happened on a Monday morning. Alexander had arrived at the office early, as always. But this time, he spotted something that made his blood simmer. Olivia was at the coffee station, laughing at something her coworker, David, had said. David, one of the younger executives, smooth, charming, and far too interested in her. Alexander clenched his jaw. Since when did she smile like that at David? And why did it bother him so much? He wasn't jealous. That would be ridiculous. Yet, when he saw David place a casual hand on the small of Olivia's back, guiding her away toward the conference room, Alexander felt an unfamiliar heat rise sharply in his chest. He was distracted the entire morning. When Olivia walked past his office later, her confidence as unwavering as ever, Alexander did something completely uncharacteristic. He called out to her, "Miss Parker." Olivia stopped, turning toward him, her expression unreadable. "Yes, Mr. Reed?" For a moment he had no idea what to say. The usual sharp words, the teasing remarks, they were all on the tip of his tongue. But looking at her now, the woman who had proved him wrong in the most spectacular way possible, he found himself simply saying, "Never mind." Olivia raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in her eyes, but didn't press further. She simply nodded and walked away, completely unaffected. And that irritated him even more. Alexander Reed was not a man used to being ignored. But Olivia Parker? She was making a habit of it. Ever since the gala, Olivia had been polite, professional, but distinctly distant. Her cool demeanor was driving Alexander insane. He wasn't used to being ignored, but Olivia Parker seemed to be making a habit of it. So, he did what he did best. He found a way to confront her directly. It happened after a department meeting. As employees exited the conference room, Alexander stepped into Olivia's path, blocking her way. "Miss Parker." She looked up at him, her brown eyes calm but guarded. "Yes, Mr. Reed?" He studied her for a moment. "You've been avoiding me." Olivia tilted her head slightly, a flicker of amusement in her gaze. "I wasn't aware you required my attention outside of work responsibilities." His jaw tightened. Why was she so infuriatingly composed? "I just find it curious," he said smoothly, his voice laced with a subtle challenge, "that after the gala you suddenly have no interest in speaking to me." Olivia gave him a small, unimpressed smile. "I wasn't aware we ever had deep conversations to begin with." Alexander narrowed his eyes. He had expected her to fluster, to stammer, to show some sign of being affected, but she was completely in control. It irritated him, and so, in a moment of unchecked frustration, he made a colossal mistake. He scoffed, his voice turning cold, condescending. "So was it just for show then? Dressing up to prove a point? Now that everyone's seen you, you don't need the act anymore." The moment the words left his mouth, he instantly regretted them, because for the first time, Olivia's calm facade cracked. Her expression froze. Then, something profound shifted in her eyes, not anger, but something much colder. Disappointment. What profound impact do you think Alexander's words will have on Olivia? And can a mistake like this truly be forgiven? Share your raw emotions in the comments below. If this pivotal moment has you gripped, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next part of this transformative story. "I should have known," she murmured, her voice barely audible, filled with a quiet bitterness. Alexander frowned. "What?" She met his gaze, her voice steady but sharp, each word a precise cut. "That no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, you'll always see me as the same girl you mocked in that meeting. That's not. I don't need your approval, Mr. Reed." She cut him off, her voice ringing with absolute certainty. "And I certainly don't need your opinion on who I am." Then, without another word, she walked past him. Alexander stood frozen in the bustling hallway, utterly alone. For the first time in his life, he had no idea how to fix what he had just broken. Alexander Reed was a man of habit. He liked order, control, and predictability. But ever since that conversation with Olivia, the one where she had looked at him with pure disappointment before walking away, he had felt anything but in control. At first, he told himself it didn't matter, that she didn't matter. But then he started noticing things. Not just the way her confidence never wavered, or the way she held her head high despite everything. No, he started truly noticing her. How she was the first to arrive at work and the last to leave. How she handled complex problems without hesitation, often solving crises before they even reached his desk. How other employees, even the most senior ones, seemed to gravitate toward her, seeking her calm advice and quiet strength. And then, one afternoon, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. He had been walking past the break room when he spotted a new intern, nervous and visibly flustered, fumbling with a stack of documents. Before the papers could scatter onto the floor, Olivia was there. She crouched down without a word, helping the young woman gather them, offering soft words of encouragement, her presence a calming anchor. Alexander watched as Olivia patiently guided the intern through the task, her voice calm, her patience unwavering. She wasn't doing it for recognition. She wasn't seeking approval. She simply cared. Something twisted in his chest. Had he been so utterly blinded by her appearance, by his own arrogance, that he had completely failed to see who she truly was? For the first time, Alexander wondered, had he been profoundly wrong about Olivia all along? It started as a routine business dinner. A group of elite executives had gathered at a five-star restaurant for negotiations, and Alexander had only half listened, his attention drifting somewhere else. Or rather, someone else. Olivia. She had been invited to the dinner as well. Her recent contributions to the company had more than earned her a seat at the table. Alexander had expected her to stay quiet, to simply observe. But instead, she had held her own. She debated. She presented. She spoke with intelligence. with wit, with a quiet confidence that captivated the entire room. And apparently she had captivated someone else too. Across the table, one of their key business partners, a well-dressed, charming man named Marcus Kane, was watching Olivia with undeniable interest. Alexander noticed immediately the way Marcus leaned closer, the way his eyes never left her. And then the final straw. Marcus raised his glass toward Olivia and said, "Miss Parker, I must say you're quite impressive. How about dinner? Just the two of us." The entire table fell silent. Olivia hesitated for half a second, not out of flattery, but because she was caught off guard. And before she could even answer, Alexander spoke. "She's busy." His voice was sharp, firm, laced with something unmistakably possessive. Olivia's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with surprise. "Excuse me?" Alexander stood abruptly, reaching for her wrist and pulling her to her feet. "We need to talk," he muttered, guiding her decisively toward the terrace. Once outside, Emma yanked her arm free. "What the hell was that?" Alexander ran a hand through his hair, clearly agitated. His usual composure rattled. "You think you can just go to dinner with anyone?" Olivia crossed her arms, an amused smirk playing on her lips. "Are you seriously telling me who I can and can't have dinner with?" His jaw tightened. "I'm saying Kane isn't interested in business. And you know it." She raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge in her eyes. "Why do you care?" Silence. Alexander looked away for half a second, just long enough for her to see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I don't want you to be taken advantage of," he said finally, his voice oddly strained. Olivia studied him, her gaze searching, perceptive. There was something unspoken in his words, something deeper, something that didn't quite fit the ruthless CEO persona. And then it hit her. "Oh my God!" she whispered, realization dawning, a soft gasp escaping her lips. "You're jealous." Alexander stiffened, a flicker of pure panic in his eyes. "I am not." Emma laughed a soft, knowing laugh, a sound that utterly disarmed him. For the first time, Alexander Reed looked genuinely flustered. She took a step closer, tilting her head slightly, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You totally are." Alexander gritted his teeth, a quiet curse escaping his lips. "Go back inside, Parker." But as Olivia turned to leave, she couldn't wipe the triumphant smirk off her face. And Alexander? He let out another quiet curse under his breath. Because he knew she was right. He was jealous, and he had no idea what to do about it. What do you think is the biggest challenge Alexander faces in accepting his true feelings? And what kind of impact will this revelation have on Emma? Share your insights in the comments below. If this story of unexpected emotions is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. After that night, things shifted. Alexander was still Alexander, still arrogant, still impossible at times. But something was distinctly different. He no longer threw careless insults her way. Instead, he started subtly noticing when she was overwhelmed with work. And he helped. Not in obvious ways that would compromise her pride, but in small, almost magical ones. Like the time she had been drowning in paperwork, and somehow, half of it mysteriously disappeared from her desk, processed and approved ahead of schedule. Or the time her old laptop crashed, and before she could even submit a tech request, a sleek new one, top of the line, arrived on her desk. At first, she didn't want to believe it had anything to do with him. She told herself it was just coincidence. But then, one evening, she caught him. She had forgotten her phone in the conference room and went back to retrieve it, only to find Alexander standing by her desk, casually placing a neatly wrapped sandwich beside her computer. He hadn't noticed her yet, and for a brief, unguarded moment, she saw it. Not the ruthless CEO, not the arrogant businessman, just a man who, despite his best efforts, was starting to care. Something warm and unfamiliar settled in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, Alexander Reed wasn't entirely terrible. Alexander Reed had never been afraid of anything. Deals worth billions? Negotiations with ruthless businessmen? Controlling an entire global empire? Easy. But this was terrifying. He had spent the last few weeks watching Olivia Parker slip past every wall he had carefully built around himself. And worse, he had inadvertently led her. He noticed her in ways he never should have. How she bit her lip when she was deep in thought. How she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was frustrated. How the mere sight of her, the sound of her laughter, the way she challenged him, the way she was simply Olivia, felt like the only thing in his meticulously calculated life that wasn't planned, wasn't controlled. And that scared the hell out of him, because he knew exactly how this story ended. Love wasn't a luxury someone like him could afford. He had seen what it did. His parents' tumultuous marriage was proof enough. His father had always put the company first, obsessively. His mother had begged for more time, more attention, more of him. And in the end, heartbroken and defeated, she left. Alexander had promised himself he would never let that happen to him. He would never let love make him weak. So he made a decision. A stupid, painful decision. He would push her away. Before he lost control completely, Olivia had been walking toward the conference room, her thoughts already on her next task. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But then she heard her name, and she stopped motionless. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Alexander was speaking with Marcus Kane, the very business partner who had asked her to dinner. Marcus let out a low chuckle. So, Alexander, rumor has it you've taken quite an interest in Miss Parker. Olivia's heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She waited. She desperately hoped for Alexander to deny it, to say something, anything that would prove her suspicions wrong. But then his voice came, flat, unfeeling, cold. I don't have time for distractions like that. Olivia's breath hitched, a sharp, ragged intake of air. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Distractions? Alexander sighed, a sound of dismissive irritation. She's good at her job, but that's all. Relationships are a waste of time. A sharp, hollow pain pierced through Olivia's chest. She had been a fool, a naive, hopeful fool. She had let herself believe that Alexander Reed, the arrogant CEO who once mocked her, who had spent years looking down on her, could actually care. That he could be more than just a boss, more than just a temporary flicker of interest. But she had been wrong, profoundly, painfully wrong. He had never seen her as anything more than a passing amusement. Something temporary, something replaceable. She turned and walked away, her footsteps muffled by the carpet, before she could hear another agonizing word. Because she had heard enough. What do you think is the deepest pain Alexander inflicted on Olivia with his words? And how will this crushing rejection fuel her next move? Share your raw emotions in the comments below. If this story of betrayal and a shattered heart has you gripped, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next pivotal chapter. Olivia didn't go home that night. She went straight to her desk, straight to her resignation letter. And by morning she was gone. Alexander Reed had never cared when people left him. Employees came and went. Business partners switched alliances driven by profit. Lovers drifted away, convenient and temporary. It was simply how life worked. But when Olivia Parker walked out of his life, something inside him irrevocably cracked. At first, he told himself it was nothing. She was just an employee, nothing more. But the first morning without her at the office, he felt it. The gnawing emptiness. The way his perfectly brewed coffee tasted bitter without her sarcastic remarks in the break room. The way his high-stakes meetings felt dull, lifeless, without her sharp intellect challenging his opinions. The way his vast office felt colder, quieter, utterly devoid of purpose. Work became meaningless. Numbers blurred together on his screens. Profits, once his sole obsession, no longer excited him. Because what was the point of building an empire? He had spent his entire life accumulating wealth and power. But now he had no one to share it with. And then it hit him. A realization that struck him with the force of a physical blow. He had been wrong. About everything. Olivia wasn't just another employee. She wasn't a distraction. She was the one person who had ever truly seen him, the man beneath the CEO's mask. And he had let her go. He couldn't let that be the end of their story. So, with a desperation he had never known, he did the only thing that made sense. He went after her. Alexander Reed wasted no time. He had to find her. It took some digging, leveraging every contact, every resource he had, but Alexander finally found Olivia. She had started working with a non-profit organization dedicated to helping young women build careers in business. And tonight, she was the keynote speaker at their annual charity gala. Alexander didn't hesitate. He arrived at the prestigious event, dressed in his usual impeccable tailored suit. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't there as CEO Alexander Reed. He was just a man in love, desperate for a second chance. The moment he stepped inside the glittering ballroom, his eyes found her. Olivia stood on stage, poised and confident, speaking passionately to the captivated audience. She was brilliant. She was breathtaking. And Alexander knew, with a certainty that shook him to his core, that he had never wanted anything more than he wanted her. So, as soon as she finished speaking, before the applause even faded, before anyone else could react, he made his move. Alexander walked straight onto the stage, a beacon of determination cutting through the spotlight. The entire room fell silent, every eye fixed on him, utterly bewildered. Olivia turned, her eyes widening in profound shock as she recognized him. "Alexander?" she whispered, her heartbeat racing, a frantic drum against her ribs. He took a deep, steadying breath, gripping the microphone stand. "I was wrong," he said, his voice firm but trembling with raw emotion. Murmurs rippled through the stunned crowd. Olivia stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Alexander swallowed hard. He had never done anything so reckless, so vulnerable, so completely out of character in his life. But for her, he would do anything. "I judged you for the way you dressed," he admitted, his voice raw with regret. "I dismissed you because I was too arrogant to see who you truly were." Alexander took a hesitant step closer, ignoring the audience entirely. "I thought I didn't have time for love," he confessed, his gaze fixed solely on her. "I thought it would make me weak." His voice dropped to a choked whisper, for her ears alone. "But then you left, and I realized the only thing that makes me weak is losing you." Olivia's eyes glistened, tears spilling freely now. "I love you, Olivia," Alexander said, his voice cracking with a fierce, undeniable truth. "I don't care about the past. I don't care about anything except you." The crowd held their breath, suspended in the intensity of the moment. And then Olivia spoke. What words do you think Olivia will choose to respond to Alexander's monumental confession? And what profound impact will this public declaration have on their future? Share your raw emotions and predictions in the comments below. If this story of an unshakable love overcoming immense odds is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. Olivia had spent weeks trying to forget him, trying desperately to convince herself that Alexander Reed didn't deserve her. But standing here on this stage, looking into his eyes, seeing the raw truth, the profound vulnerability, the undeniable love shining back at her, she knew. He meant it. This wasn't the cold, arrogant man she had met months ago. This was someone who had truly changed. For her, tears slipped silently down her cheeks. She took a slow, shaky breath and, through her tears, a radiant smile bloomed on her face. "You idiot," she whispered, the words filled with a complex mix of affection and disbelief. Alexander let out a breathless laugh, a sound of pure relief. "Is that a yes?" Olivia nodded, tears streaming freely now. "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder, clearer, filled with every ounce of her soul. "Yes, Alexander. 1,000 times, yes." The room erupted in a deafening wave of applause, shouts, and cheers. But Alexander didn't hear any of it, because in the next moment, Olivia was in his arms, pressing her lips fiercely to his, pouring into him every word she couldn't say. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Reed knew with absolute certainty. He had finally found something worth more than all the money in the world. Alexander Reed, a man who once thought love was a weakness, now knew better. He stood in the middle of a breathtaking garden, illuminated by soft golden lights and fragrant with fresh white roses, waiting for the only woman who had ever truly mattered. Tonight was the night. He had spent the past year meticulously earning her trust, proving his love not just through words, but through countless, consistent actions. And now he was finally ready to take the next most terrifying and most exhilarating step. Olivia entered the garden, her eyes widening in surprise. "Alexander, what is all this?" she asked softly, taking in the fairy lights that twinkled like captured stars, the candlelit path, and the intimate table set for two. Alexander smiled, a nervous tremor in his hands as he took her hand. "Just a small dinner," he said, leading her toward the table. Olivia gave him a knowing look, a hint of playful amusement in her eyes. "Alexander Reed doesn't do small anything." He chuckled, but there was a distinct nervousness in his gaze. They ate, they laughed, they talked, their conversation flowing easily as it always did. But Alexander could barely focus, because he was about to change both of their lives forever. As the night deepened, he finally stood, reaching into his pocket. Olivia's breath caught, her eyes fixed on his hand, her heart hammering. Alexander dropped to one knee, opening a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a stunning diamond ring, simple yet elegant, its brilliance mirroring the light in her eyes. For the first time in his life, Alexander Reed looked at someone not as a business investment, not as a deal to be won, but as his future. "Olivia Parker," he said, his voice steady but filled with raw, overwhelming emotion. "I used to think love was a distraction. I thought it would make me weak." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "But then you walked into my life, and suddenly, nothing else made sense." Olivia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You changed me. You made me better. And now I can't imagine a single day without you." A soft gasp escaped her lips. "So, Olivia," he continued, his heart pounding a furious rhythm against his ribs, "will you marry me?" What do you think is the deepest meaning of Alexander's proposal, given his past and his transformation? And how will Olivia's response forever change their lives? Share your raw emotions and predictions in the comments below. If this story of an unexpected love blooming from the ashes of old wounds is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. For a timeless moment, there was only silence, broken by the gentle rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Then, with tears streaming down her face, Olivia let out a choked, joyful laugh. "You idiot," she whispered, the words filled with a complex mix of disbelief and overwhelming affection. Alexander let out a breathless laugh of relief. "Is that a yes?" Olivia nodded, tears blurring her vision, but her smile was radiant, utterly certain. "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder, clearer, filled with every ounce of her soul. "Yes, Alexander. 1,000 times yes." The garden erupted in a symphony of joyous sounds. A symphony Alexander barely heard, because in the very next moment, Olivia was in his arms, pressing her lips fiercely to his, pouring into him every word she couldn't say. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Reed knew with an absolute, undeniable certainty. He had finally found his forever. 1 year later, their wedding was a dream. Not because of a grand venue or extravagant details, but because it was real. When Olivia walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on his, Ethan knew he had never been more certain of anything in his life. But beyond the wedding, what mattered most was what they built together. With Olivia's fierce passion and Ethan's immense resources, they launched the Hayes Cross Initiative, a program dedicated to helping young women build their careers in business, providing them with the mentorship and opportunities that Olivia had once fought so hard to earn on her own. Their days were filled with profound purpose. Their nights were filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and a love that grew deeper with every shared breath. And every morning, when Ethan woke up next to the woman who had utterly changed his life, he knew He had finally found something money could never buy: happiness, unwavering love, and a future worth everything. They spent their honeymoon in Italy. Alex came too, of course. It wasn't a conventional start to a marriage, but then, neither of them had lived conventional lives. They walked along cobbled streets in Florence, shared gooey gelato in Venice, and danced barefoot under the stars in the gardens of a small villa overlooking the coast. Olivia laughed more in those 2 weeks than she had in the last decade. Her joy a symphony Ethan silently memorized. And at night, with Alex asleep in the next room, they whispered promises to each other beneath soft sheets and open windows. Not perfect, but real. Always real. What do you think is the biggest secret a couple can keep from each other? And how do you believe Ethan and Olivia will navigate this unexpected challenge to their new family? Share your insights in the comments below. If the story of love and hidden truths is gripping you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next pivotal chapter. Then came the call. Late one afternoon, back in Manhattan, as the city groaned beneath the oppressive summer heat, Olivia stepped into her clinic for a regular shift and was met by her director. "There's something you should see," the woman said, handing her an unmarked envelope. Inside, a printed article draft. Unpublished. The title screamed, "The Nurse, the Billionaire, and the Other Son." Olivia's heart stopped. The article claimed Ethan had a second child. A son born of an affair during his marriage to Grace, now living abroad. The piece insinuated Olivia had agreed to marry him only after discovering this information, as part of a quiet arrangement to keep the story from going public. It was a lie. A cruel, precise one. But it felt deeply personal, because someone had gone digging. Too deep, too close. That night, Olivia asked him, "Ethan, is there something I don't know?" He stared at her, stunned. "No," he said slowly, his voice clear. "There's no other child. No hidden life. I swear to you." Her voice was quiet, steady. "Then why does this feel so specific?" He sat down, then exhaled something heavy. A truth held captive for years, a ghost from his past. "There was someone before you, after Grace died. It wasn't serious, but she told me she was pregnant a few weeks before she disappeared. I hired a private investigator. She'd left the country. I never confirmed anything." He looked up, his eyes raw. "I haven't told anyone, not even my lawyers, because I didn't want to chase ghosts." Olivia stood still, absorbing the revelation. "Ethan, if there's even a chance." "I know." Silence filled the room. Then she asked, quietly, "What would you do if it were true?" He didn't hesitate, his gaze firm. "I'd find him. I'd bring him home." The story leaked within days. Not the full, drafted article, but a devastating headline, a whisper, a grainy photograph of Ethan exiting a building he hadn't entered in years, hinting at a secret life. The media ran with it. Cross scandal buried by marriage? Olivia kept her head down. She went to work. She loved Alex, but she felt the shift. On the street, in the grocery store, even at the clinic, where some parents looked at her like they weren't sure whether to admire or judge her. Ethan stayed silent publicly, fiercely protecting Olivia. Privately, he searched. Within a week, he had a name, Leo, 6 years old, living in Marseille, France, with a woman who'd changed her name and refused contact with anyone from her past. And a DNA test confirmed it. He was Ethan's son. Olivia read the report in silence, her hand finding Ethan's, then looked at him, her eyes filled with a new, complex understanding. "So what now? I go get him." She nodded, a profound resolve settling over her. "I'm coming with you." Marseille was warm and quiet, its streets buzzing with summer markets and vibrant music. But Olivia could feel the tension in Ethan's shoulders as they stood outside the small, yellow house on the hillside. The door opened slowly. The woman who stood there was thinner than the photograph, her eyes tired and guarded. And behind her, a boy, dark curls, big serious eyes. He looked remarkably like Alex. Ethan stepped forward, his voice a gentle, hopeful whisper. "Hi, Leo. I think I might be your dad." Leo said nothing, but he didn't run. And that, Ethan knew, was enough for a start. They stayed in France for 2 weeks. Olivia watched, captivated, as Ethan slowly, patiently built trust with a boy who had only known shadows of him. They played cards, kicked a soccer ball in the sun, talked about outer space and exotic animals and the delights of American breakfasts. Leo didn't call him Dad. Not yet. But when they said goodbye at the airport, the boy ran after Ethan and hugged him tight, clinging to him. "Will I see you again?" he asked, his voice small. Ethan knelt, his eyes welling. "I promise." Back in Manhattan, Olivia tucked Alex into bed. He looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Do I still get to keep you forever?" he asked, his voice small, vulnerable. Olivia kissed his forehead, a profound sense of certainty filling her. Always. But that night, as she lay beside Ethan, he whispered something into the dark. "Do you ever think this is too much for you?" "All of it." Olivia turned to face him, her heart overflowing. "No," she said. "I think life finally stopped taking and started giving. And I think we're just getting started." He reached for her hand beneath the covers, their fingers intertwining. 6 months later, the Manhattan townhouse felt entirely different. Louder, warmer, truly lived in. Leo was moving in permanently. It had taken time and months of complex paperwork, sensitive therapy sessions, countless meetings with lawyers and mediators. But Ethan had been unwavering, patient, gentle, present, and Leo had responded, slowly, cautiously, but surely. He still didn't call Ethan Dad, but he called him when he had a nightmare, and that, Ethan knew, meant more than any title. Olivia, meanwhile, had become the quiet, steady center of their burgeoning household. She didn't push. She simply listened. She gave Leo the space he needed, and he, in turn, slowly gave her his trust. Alex adjusted faster than anyone expected. He proudly told everyone he had a bonus brother, and he particularly liked that Leo was good at Legos but terribly bad at Mario Kart. The boys were different, one loud and imaginative, the other cautious and careful, but somehow, beautifully, they worked, just like the two people raising them. Olivia stepped into her clinic role full-time again, but this time, it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. She focused her immense energy on community programs, bringing vital, accessible care to children without resources. She established a scholarship in Benjamin's name, her late brother's, ensuring his memory would fuel new dreams. Ethan matched every donation, but only after asking her explicit permission, a testament to the respect she had truly earned. He knew better now. In late fall, as the vibrant leaves fell and the holidays approached, Ethan planned something quiet. No press. No spectacle. Just family. He brought Olivia back to the Vermont cabin one weekend. Just the two of them. They hiked, talked, held each other under the vast, star-filled sky. And on the final night, he surprised her with a second ring. Simple, elegant, engraved inside with the poignant words, "Not because I lost, but because I found." Olivia didn't cry this time. She just smiled, kissed him slowly, and whispered, "Forever." They didn't need a second wedding. They had a second life. And that was enough. Months later, Olivia found out she was pregnant. She sat with the test in the bathroom for 20 stunned minutes. Not scared, just utterly overwhelmed by the sheer, unadulterated joy. Ethan walked in, saw her face, and immediately dropped to his knees. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. She nodded, silent, then handed him the test. His eyes widened, then filled with tears of pure, unbridled emotion. He held her for a long, quiet moment, whispering, "You're incredible," over and over until she believed it too. They told the boys together. Alex screamed with joy, throwing his arms around them both. Leo didn't say anything at first, just went quiet. Later that night, Olivia found him sitting alone on the stairs, a small, worried figure. "You okay?" He looked up. "I don't know how to be a big brother." She sat beside him, pulling him close. "Neither did Alex. Neither did I when I had my brother." You don't have to be perfect, Leo. You just have to be you. That's enough. He leaned into her shoulder. Do I still get to stay? Her throat tightened. She looked him in the eyes, her voice filled with unwavering love and certainty. You're not going anywhere. When their daughter was born, a tiny, perfect bundle, they named her Elena, after Olivia's mother. Leo held her first, his small hands surprisingly gentle. Alex sang to her, off-key but full of love. Ethan cried harder than anyone, tears of pure, unadulterated joy and gratitude. And Olivia, she just watched the life she never imagined unfold around her, piece by piece, like the final perfect snap of a complex puzzle falling into place. One evening, years later, Olivia stood in the hallway outside the nursery. Elena had just fallen asleep in Ethan's arms, her tiny head nestled against his chest. Leo was in the living room, reading aloud to Alex, their voices a soft, comforting murmur. And the whole house was lit with the kind of soft, golden light that only exists when love has truly earned its way in, when a family is profoundly, beautifully home. Ethan came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her gently back against his chest. You okay? He asked. She leaned back into him, completely at peace. I'm better than okay. I'm alive. He smiled, kissing the top of her head, his voice rough with emotion. I never said thank you. For what? She whispered. For saving Alex. For saving me. She turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his, filled with a love that transcended words. I didn't save you, Ethan. You let yourself be saved. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, quiet, real. And inside, their life went on. Messy, beautiful, unscripted, and utterly true. Built not from perfect beginnings, but from boundless second chances. Ethan Cross once thought that success was everything, that power, wealth, and control were all that mattered. But then came Olivia Hayes, the woman who proved him wrong. She wasn't just another employee. She wasn't just a passing distraction. She was his greatest challenge, his greatest lesson, his greatest love. And in the end, it wasn't power or money that changed his life. It was her. Now they stand together, not just as husband and wife, but as partners in life, in love, and in purpose. Because love isn't just about finding someone, it's about choosing them every single day. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming, emotional tale. Because sometimes, the most unexpected stories lead to the most unforgettable love. Love has the power to change everything, if we're brave enough to let it.